How crazy was the Shadow King in his teenage years? Can you imagine? Just because his brother called him a little pest, he dragged him by the hair for 10 miles. He sat with his legs crossed, ignoring his tools. His father said, "You greedy useless person, how can you be my father? All those who wronged him in his past life will be trampled beneath him. This is all because he died in humiliation, the most genuine person he was, to save his family. Since he has lost the one who was most real, he will become a demon, letting the whole world accompany him to the grave. Just as he slaughtered the empire and all things, bringing everything to an end." A prince approached him with a sword in hand, fury accusing him of killing his father, and shouting that he is a monster. Hearing that word, he laughed loudly. How dare they describe me, who killed 100,000 people, with such lowly words? I look at the trembling emperor before me. He let this prince kill him. This way, he could take revenge, and be honored as the hero who killed the monster. If he wants to leave, no one can stop him. A broken leg can heal normally. Injured organs can regenerate. But right now, he only wishes for death. The crown prince raised his sword, ready to strike, yet he hesitated to bring it down. With a clang, his sword fell to the ground. The prince also knelt down. He touched the prince's head and said, "Kill me. Can you truly live on after this? Only those who are truly heroic will be given the title of hero." At this moment, the prince is in tears. He asks the prince to tell everyone that the demon has been vanquished. The war is over. The prince wipes his tears and shouts, "Uncle, you possess such great power. Why choose to live this way?" He smiled, without saying a word. Thus, he chose to end it all. He chose to follow the person he truly was. On the brink of death, he reflected on his life. He thought of the father who treated him so poorly he doubted if he was his biological son. He died during childbirth. The mother who only exists in the portrait. And his sister, famous for her beauty across the continent. And the second brother who's always been a bother to him. Today, that infamous Jack who dominated the continent is about to die. His life was quite legendary, yet also quite regretful. His heart has stopped beating, but he opens his eyes again. He, who should have died, has returned to his youth. Perhaps even heaven is afraid of this demon king. It dares not take him. He doesn't understand what has happened. This is not dark magic, nor is it an illusion. It is rebirth. Since he has lived again, everything he lost will be reclaimed one by one. Fate must be controlled by oneself. Let's see how he defies the heavens to change his destiny in this life. Jingu personally poured a cup of cappuccino over his younger brother's head, yet his brother didn't dare to say a word. He even said it was really tasty. In his previous life, he was just as cowardly as a child. He was regarded as a disgrace and a laughingstock by everyone. They even said he, the youngest son, wasn't worthy of being human. Even the commoners occasionally tease him during their tea breaks. All of this is thanks to his second brother. The only person he can rely on in this family is his elder sister. She is clearly the eldest daughter, yet she has not become the heir of the family. At this moment, he has been reborn into his youth. Just now, the only kind butler in this marquis household, Alan, handed him a glass of juice. As he happily drinks it, someone hit him hard on the head, but it had been decades since anyone had hit him like that. He angrily turned his head. It was actually his brother, who had bullied him in his past life. His expression turned grim. He stood up to face the brother who had beaten him to the point he couldn't cultivate. It was his sister's political marriage that he had taken the lead in exploiting. He had even publicly asked whether the royal family and the duke's family wanted to gain anything. The sister looked at Jack with an angry gaze. He swung his fist at him, shouting, "You little bastard! How dare you touch me? You're asking for death." He didn't expect his usually weak brother to grab his arm. This surprised him. He cursed Jack, astonished that he dared to fight back now. "You're even less than an ant." He hadn't finished speaking when Jack threw him over his shoulder. Jack smiled and asked if he needed a hand. Angry and humiliated, he prepared to retaliate. He cursed under his breath. The knights around were afraid to offend the young master, and didn't dare intervene. Jack was not surprised, just found it ridiculous. At that moment, Butler Allen stood in front of him, begging the second young master to spare the young master this time. Please don't use force. That could cost someone their life. How could his second brother take him seriously? He knocked him to the ground. Jack coldly watched all of this. He wasn't worried about Allen at all, because he had hidden a lot of things. At that moment, the second prince shouted that he would deal with him and the servants. Jack beckoned him over with a finger. He even mocked him for fighting with words. This made the second brother very angry. He trembled with rage and drew his sword. Watching this move, he smiled contemptuously. Although he had no training and lacked fighting spirit, he was confident he wouldn't lose to this basic swordplay. He also wanted to step forward calmly. Jack considered whether to just throw him out, so he wouldn't have to face reality. Jack pressed his head down forcefully. At least let this guy experience the 1% humiliation he once brought me. A demon king who single-handedly destroyed a nation. Reborn. His older brother, who bullied him mercilessly since childhood, still dares to provoke him. He stepped forward and grabbed his head, pushing him to the ground. At this moment, the second brother still didn't understand why his younger brother had suddenly become so skilled. He tentatively probed with his foot. Has he fainted? He turned back and glared at the butler. The knights of the Allen family were so quiet they didn't dare speak. One knight nervously grasped the scabbard at his waist. He raised his hand to signal him to stop. If you want to live, I advise you not to move. Stand at attention for me. Not bad, my foolish brother. Saying this, he grabbed his brother's head, dragging him forward. As he walked, he remarked on his thick hair. But you should lose some weight. The weather is nice today. Brother must be very hot. Let this kind younger brother personally wash your face. Saying this, he pressed his head into the water. I can't imagine how panicked his brother was at that moment, struggling in the water. He even forgot to use his energy. This despicable guy will commit more than just a few bad deeds in the future. Sister hasn't been married to the empire for long. He poisoned his own father. After inheriting the title, he committed all sorts of atrocities. She is not angry because of family honor, nor is it about avenging her father. She is furious because this fool completely wasted the opportunity her sister sacrificed her happiness for. Her sister was not only intelligent, but also very kind. To bring honor to the family, she married the notorious scoundrel, the fourth prince. Enduring humiliation. If that bastard father and fool brother knew the fate of their sister. As he was thinking about this, his brother's pleading voice reached him. He watched as Jack trembled, begging for mercy. Spare me, please. This expression he had grown tired of in his past life, the look of fear that emerged when people were consumed by death. He hugged his brother. He made his brother think carefully about what he had done to his younger sibling. Oh, foolish brother. Do you know what family is worth? Shouldn't your brother teach you that? Seeing his brother coming at him with a fist, he quickly begged for mercy, and shouted, I was wrong. Brother, spare me. At that moment, a voice came from behind. Stop. It was Alan. He told the young master not to do this. You can't kill him. Jack retracted his murderous intent. He punched his brother. Seeing him fall unconscious, he tossed him aside, like throwing away a bag of garbage. He shouted to the knight beside him. The man quickly replied, Yes, young master. What can I do for you? Come and clean this up. He's not dead yet. Hurry and take him away. Make him disappear from my sight within 2 minutes. He walked past the butler, Alan. Alan turned to look at the young master, so resolute. He has changed. His actions today spread throughout the entire family in an instant. And the family, upon hearing the news, was thrown into chaos. But what does it matter? He is determined to protect those who are truly his. Everything he has lost will be reclaimed personally. As the family's useless youngest son, he actually beat up his brother, the heir to the family. This greatly angered his father, the Marquis. Send for me. Have the third son come over. Upon hearing this news, he began to change his clothes in preparation to leave. Butler Allen said he would accompany him. He waved his hand, saying it wasn't necessary. I can handle it myself. The butler had no choice but to concede. As you wish, young master. Please ensure you return safely. Soon, he arrived at the family home. The people around him were whispering. It had been a long time since he was looked down upon like this. Just as he was about to push open his father's room door, but was stopped by the guards. Didn't they see it was the young master? In the past, he would have shrunk back at such a gaze. But now it's different. Jack smiled and said, You'd better not look at me like that. Be careful or I'll dig your eyes out. While the guards were still puzzled by his words, the young master kicked one of them to the ground. The dog actually dares to block its owner from entering the house. Did your father tell you to do this? After saying that, he turned away and left, probably thinking that his father wanted him to stand outside and reflect. The guard hurriedly asked the young master, Where are you going? He turned back and told his father that if he had something to say to him, he should come see him in person. From now on, don't summon me for every little thing. I was busy watching him leave. The guard thought this young master had gone mad. When his father learned of this, he lamented how much his little son seemed to have changed. At this moment, Jack was sitting in his rose manor. He knew his father would come today. Sure enough, it wasn't long before. His father brought a group of people here. He looked at his father, who had walked up to him. He thought about how in his previous life, after running away from home, he almost died at his hands. He even tried to push the child onto a scoundrel. What a greedy and incapable person to realize his ambitions. How could such a person be my father? He crossed his legs and welcomed his father. Father glared at Jack, questioning why he did that. He wouldn't back down either. He simply replied that he just wanted to hit him. What's wrong? The mother of the second brother scolded him for being so disrespectful to the head of the family. Jack, with his legs crossed, remarked that it was just some dog barking. Father suddenly became ominous and terrifying. The confrontation flared up around his staff. He leaned in toward Jack. He knew his father wanted to check if he had trained in fighting spirit, but there was none of that within him. His father was surprised. How did his younger son defeat his brother without fighting spirit? Could he have a talent for martial arts? Jack slowly took a sip of juice. He neither denied nor confirmed it. Father told those around not to speak too much. He said to Jack, I thought you were useless. Now it seems you still have some value. Jack stood up and said, does being useless mean I'm not your son? Looking at his defiant son, Father asked him, is what you're doing now, to seek my approval? Jack seriously told him, now he doesn't care about any of this at all. Father turned and left. He said he understood his thoughts. And Jack was surprised. His father actually left without getting angry. He shouted ahead, addressing his second brother's mother. Are you worrying too much about him? So the wrinkles on your face have deepened. You should pay attention to skincare. These words made him furious. Although he's not a pervert, seeing him angry inexplicably makes me happy. So he deeply bowed and said goodbye to the two of them. No need to see you off. Wishing you a pleasant time. His sister knelt in the heavy rain for 10 days and nights. She did this to beg the scoundrel, the fourth prince, to spare her family. The emperor and the fourth prince felt pity. They agreed to her request. This was the version he first heard. It even became a local legend. Yet only Jack knew just how tragic the truth about his sister was. At that time, 17-year-old him had been away from home for 10 years. The kingdom of Arad, where he was destroyed. Atlantis annexed the entire western continent. It became the most powerful empire. His family struggled to survive for a time. However, that was because his sister learned that her family was imprisoned. She knelt before her husband, the fourth prince, begging him to spare her family. But because his sister was of a lowly status, his request was disregarded by the emperor and the princes. That was how the opening scene came to be. Just as his sister was thanking the fourth prince for saving their family, he was pressed against the wall. Coldly, he told her not to be too complacent. I can make your family disappear from this world at any time. It's just not the right time yet. The fourth prince smiled and said, so you should listen to me. In this way, his sister became the plaything of the fourth prince. Everyone treated her like a servant. What happened next is easy to imagine. As time flew by, the fourth prince, who lost interest in his sister, ruthlessly abandoned her. It was at this time that he locked her away in a separate villa. Her family likely perished around that time. When he returned, everything is different now. He learned the truth while interrogating the fourth prince who took away his sister. In the end, the fourth prince, knowing he would die, provocatively said everyone knows your sister is very seductive. Hearing this made his heart ache like a knife. His sister's fate is far worse than anyone can imagine. He picked up the branding iron. He said, how could you treat my sister this way? As his screams echoed. Jack has caused trouble for him a full 1,000 times. You royal Atlanteans are quite the good brothers. In that case, you've wronged my sister. Now my sister is dead. Then let the entire empire be buried with her. All who bear the surname Atlantean. Everyone related to the royal family. Everyone died at his hands. The queen and princess. The wife of the third prince. And the wife of the fourth prince. Anyone related must die. Not a trace of their existence in this world can be left. This is why he has gone mad. Called a monster, he has slaughtered the entire empire. Just as he stood on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He hated himself for not becoming stronger sooner. For not wielding the blood sword earlier. For not protecting the one who was most real to him. This cruel father actually sent his useless son to prison himself. Every day, he made him clean 100 toilets. He even let him eat only one meal a day, a bowl of rice mixed with cow dung. All because he defied his Marquis father. He also beat up his beloved family heir, his older brother. His butler, Alan, saw that the young master was about to face jail time. He revealed an inexplicable sadness. Although his expression was very touching, Jack really felt it was too embarrassing. After being locked up here, he wondered how his father would rescue his most beloved son. According to their script, he speculates about the family's disgrace. Jack learned the forbidden dark magic to compete for the title. And his brother discovered his fallen brother and came forward to stop him. But unexpectedly, Jack ignored his brother's words and attacked him with dark magic. Although the brother was beaten to a pulp, he generously forgave his younger brother. It seems that only the Marquis and his wife could come up with such a disgusting script. What he needs now is time and power. The place that can solve these problems is the school. He wants to recruit and build a force at the academy. Cultivate power. Strive for more time to regain the strength from his past life. As long as I regain my strength, I can protect teacher's sister and Alan. Saying this, he sat up. He snapped his fingers. His fighting spirit revealed itself. In this world, the levels of fighting spirit are divided into 10 ranks. Ranks 1 to 3 are called beginners. Ranks 4 to 6 are called experts. Levels 7 to 9 are referred to as masters, while level 10 is known as transcendent. Right now, he is conveniently locked in prison. He can avoid people's gaze. He is cultivating his fighting energy. However, at this moment, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. He quickly dispelled his emitted fighting energy, and then he burrowed into the covers. At that moment, footsteps stopped at his cell door. A gentle call of Jack was heard. Hearing the voice, Jack sat up abruptly. This voice was one he could only hear in dreams. It was his sister Elizabeth, deep in his memories. At that moment, she tenderly touched his face through the shackles. "Jack, are you okay?" His eyes were already filled with tears. Like a dream, he called out sister. The sister before him was still so beautiful and kind. He was grateful to see her in reality and not in a dream. He could no longer suppress his emotions. He unleashed his power. He shattered the shackles blocking his path. He embraced his sister. This time he must protect his sister, so that she won't suffer any more grievances. This young man learned swordsmanship at the age of 3 and reached the pinnacle. By 6, he studied magic and became a grand mage. At 14, he became a prodigy with great achievements in both magic and martial arts. A mere prison's shackles cannot confine him, nor can it hinder his reunion with his sister. This time, he deeply embraced his sister. He made a silent vow. In this life, his sister's tragedy would never be repeated. Yet, she was puzzled. She thought he had eaten something bad. He held her close. With tears in his eyes, he said that she shouldn't sacrifice herself for the family anymore. Sister gently patted his back. Just like when they were kids. "Silly little brother, just wait for your sister to find a way to get you out." The day after sister left, the guard told him, "Young Master San, you can go now." He was getting ready to take back his clothes and shoes. But unexpectedly, the arrogant guard actually ordered him to leave barefoot. A mere pawn dared to humiliate the Marquis's estate. Since the third young master looks down on others, let him personally teach you the rules with blood. Jack returned to his Rose Manor. Alan was also glad the young master was finally back. When he noticed the blood on the young master, he became very anxious. "What happened, young master?" Jack told him. "This blood isn't his. Please rest assured." However, he noticed that many guards had been added to his estate. It's likely that his father increased the troops to keep an eye on him. They even sent a knight to spy on him. Jack is very pitiful. He is a knight who takes pride in his honor and achievements. Yet he has been assigned to monitor a fallen family. At this moment, he heard about Jack's situation in prison. He approached the third young master, unsure of what to say. What Jack didn't expect was that he bowed deeply, with great respect. Looking down, he said, "Young master, I just heard a report saying you broke the guard's limbs, and even took out one of his eyes." Upon hearing this, Alan expressed that his young master would never do something so cruel. Meanwhile, the knight in front stated that such a big incident had occurred. I am qualified to ask why the third young master is doing this. Hearing the knight say this, Jack covered his face, sighing and laughing at the same time. You, a mere knight of the gap, dare to mention the word qualification to me in this situation? What I do doesn't require your report. Stand at attention, or kneel down and knock your head 100 times. Which one do you choose? Do you still want to become a? If you do, then complete your task properly. Otherwise, I'll beat up a guard every day. Right now, you should be begging me not to cause trouble, instead of discussing qualifications with me. Hearing this, the knight lowered his head. The king and the young master said they were sorry. Jack put away his hostility. He smiled happily, teasing him, saying he was truly the empire's loyal dog. He turned and left. He told the knight to handle the prison matters himself. If there were any grievances, go find the marquis. It's too awkward to call you knight. From now on, I'll just call you Chick. When I call you Chick, you need to run over immediately. Always be on standby. Do you understand? That's settled. He and Alan went back inside, leaving the bewildered Chick behind. He doesn't seem to like this name very much. This father, in order to make his daughter a tool to enhance the family's reputation, actually uses his brother as leverage. If she doesn't obediently follow his orders, he'll immediately send Jack to the coal mine to dig coal. But as long as he listens, once his brother comes of age, he'll announce his death to the outside world. Let him leave the family and live a normal life. He agreed to this for his brother's safety. Otherwise, if he disobeys even a little, his anger will be directed entirely at Jack. Elizabeth, exiting their father's room, leaned weakly against the door, thinking that her brother seems to have become less timid now. But what use is this? We cannot escape the arrangements of fate. He made a silent resolve. No matter what, he must protect his brother well. However, at this moment, Jack knew nothing of these matters. Just released from prison, he was indulging himself. He kept praising Alan's skills, saying they were truly amazing. Seeing Alan's hesitant expression, Jack told him to say whatever he wanted. No need to hold back. Aaron, don't look away. It indicates there's nothing going on. It's just that the young master is about to start school. There's only a month left of vacation. Jack has completely forgotten about going back to school. He attends the Kingdom Academy. All noble children must come here for their education. Typically, they study for 4 years. The stipulated age for enrollment is 14. Jack is currently in his first year. The first semester has already ended. It's summer vacation now. This makes him very happy to live again. He feels joy in being a student. His teacher from the last life had a great relationship with the school. He can ignore everything else, but he cannot overlook his teacher. Moreover, what he needs now is time. The school is a good place to gain time and build influence. And the butler Alan asked the girl, wherever she goes, to never cause trouble again. And Jack smiled. Don't worry, I definitely won't cause any trouble. Isn't there still a lot of time until school starts? Don't think too much about it. Do you want to eat all this with me? I can't finish it. In his last life, he took the family's most powerful technology and ran away. Only a butler named Alan stayed by his side. The two of them ran desperately, only to escape the countless troops sent by his father. When the horses could run no more, he looked back at the marquis to hunt down his own young son. The leader sent was the one he referred to as the Chick, the commander of the Iron Blood Knights. At that time, he was already a 9th-level swordsman. Faced with such a dire situation, his butler, Alan, did not hesitate to choose to slit the young master's throat. Thus, he sacrificed himself to buy time for the young master to escape. It was on this day that he discovered his butler, Alan, was actually a 9th-level magician. In this life, he had Alan sit down and dine with him, but Alan insisted that there is a distinction between master and servant. Such behavior is unacceptable. Jack angrily told him it was an order. Sit down and eat right now. Alan could only obey the young master's order and sat down. Jack asked how his sister was doing lately. Alan told Jack that his sister Elizabeth was just the same as usual. Jack smiled slightly. He took a bite of noodles and told Alan he wasn't an idiot. You know very well how difficult my sister's situation is. Seeing Alan's astonished expression, he put the food on his fork into his mouth. He complimented Alan's cooking. He told Alan that since he could remember until now, he has been able to eat without worry, because you check the food for poison every day. Aaron didn't expect that his young master knew so much. However, Jack indicated that he knew more than that. Are you now a level 9 magician? You have accompanied your mother. You should know her very well. Everyone says that sister resembles mother a lot. Then mother must be a good person, always silently protecting mother. But who would have thought that the one guarding my mother is actually a 9th rank mage? Then my mother must not be a commoner. My father doesn't know his identity either. I can pretend I don't know any of this, because he cares more about what kind of person Alan, who is sitting here at this moment, really is. And at this moment, Alan lowers his head and says, "Young master, what do you want me to do?" Jack told him that in this family, the only people he trusts are you and your sister. Just protect your sister for me. Aaron said Miss Elizabeth reached level 6 in her training at 18. Even without her, the young lady can protect herself. Jack shook his head and told him that his sister was inherently kind and easily made compromises for the family. These were things the Marquis should have done, yet it was his sister who had to face them. My butler is a 9th tier mage, and my sister is a renowned swordsman at a young age. Yet, both of these strong individuals died protecting others in their past life. Now, in this new life, I am instructing the butler, Alan, to protect my sister well during my 4 years at school. Unless there are exceptional circumstances, I won't be coming back. I seriously told him that for these 4 years, he should stay by my sister's side. After that, I will set you free. You can choose your own life. Hearing this, Alan looked somewhat confused and hesitant. Are you still mumbling about your own life? He seems to have lost direction in life. I told him not to always hide behind me. He should go find what he wants to do. Alan asked me why the deadline is 4 years. I lazily leaned back on the couch and told him, because after 4 years, I can personally protect my sister. I was just about to remind Alan to pay attention to a few key figures, when a knight outside called my name, saying he had something to report. He really has no sense of timing. He interrupted me right at a critical moment. I forced down my anger and let him in to see what he wanted to report. The one who walked in was the knight I had jokingly referred to as Little Chicken. He reported to me that the guards at the prison had finished an urgent task and sent someone to the hospital. I impatiently and sternly urged him to continue. He was clearly intimidated by my presence. He told me the excuse he had prepared. The guard I had injured was described by him as an accident that happened while practicing swordplay. After he finished speaking, I couldn't help but laugh. Not bad at all. He really has potential. I praised him. I said he truly is a good dog, worthy of being a father's companion. I asked him if he wanted me to reward him with a bone. He said to me, "Young master, my name is James. Please don't call me Little G anymore." I ignored him. I told him I wanted to practice swordsmanship. Go get me a wooden sword and a real sword right away. He actually got a bit angry and told me he wasn't a gopher. He even planned to refuse me. I smirked and said to him, "Chick, do you really hate me? I can give you a chance to teach me a lesson." At this moment, Alan nervously shouted, "Young master, don't be impulsive. Sir James still doubts whether what I said is true." I showed him my hands. So delicate and smooth. I've never even touched a sword. When we practice together, you can hit me as much as you want. At this point, Sir James asked me in confusion if I wanted to recognize him as my swordsmanship teacher. Hearing him say that, I couldn't help but laugh. What the hell? Today I heard another joke. Cut the crap. Go grab the sword. This young man was known as the Sword Bone in his past life, and he was a being who could wipe out an entire force alone. And now, an intern knight actually wants to be his swordsmanship teacher. He may not know that the boy in front of him, if standing on the bodies he has slaughtered, could stand shoulder to shoulder with the heavens. Just now, I laughed heartily, telling the knight to quickly go get his sword. But the butler, Alan, asked me, "Young master, can you do it?" That man just now was at level 4. I was chewing on a steak, and told him, "So what if he's level 4? Alan, do you lack confidence in me?" He seemed a bit worried, and told me he was afraid I'd get hurt. "Aren't you just afraid I'll lose? Do you want to make a bet with me? Let's bet on whether I can win." Alan thought carefully for a moment. He said to me, "Young master, I don't think we should bet on winning or losing, but rather on how many times you'll get hit." I couldn't help but laugh at that. "You're Alan. This bet is interesting. Tell me quickly, what should we wager?" Alan said to me seriously, "Young master, do you really want to spar with him? You're not even in the same league." Hearing this, I said to Alan with a somewhat teasing look that if I got hit by him during practice with the little chick, I'd consider it a win for him, how about that? The condition is that the loser has to fulfill a wish for the winner. Alan didn't say a word. It seemed like he was quietly listening to my antics. Young master, what do you want me to do? Just give the order directly. I'm just a servant. Hearing Alan say this, I couldn't help but want to tease him a bit. Alan is really quite amusing. I pointed my fork at him and said, I've told you before. In this Marquis's residence, I only trust my sister. And you, Butler Alan. Upon hearing this, Alan felt very happy to be recognized. But he told me that pointing at someone with a fork is very impolite. At that moment, I smirked and seriously told Alan that I would only sincerely ask for trust from those I believe in, not fate. So Alan, I'm counting on you. At that moment, Alan's eyes were filled with tears of gratitude. He looked at the young master, amazed that someone so young could speak so deeply to his heart. Looking at me with a smile, he sighed and said, Young master, if you say so, I can only agree to your request. At that moment, a knock came at the door. It was the little knight who had arrived. He knelt before me and said, Young master, my behavior just now was very disrespectful. I apologize for what I just said. If the young master needs a sparring partner, I would be more than happy to serve. I watched the little chick kneeling on the ground. And I understand that although most people ignore me to my face like that guard in prison, they are insulting me. And if he were to strike directly, he would still be worried about the consequences. I reached out my hand and suggested we go somewhere no one else is. I looked at his confused expression. I poked his forehead with my finger. I asked him, Are you afraid of losing to me? At that moment, the little chick felt humiliated. He looked at me with anger on his face. That's right, this is the look I wanted. He helplessly told me he wasn't afraid. I asked him if he thought he would definitely win. He didn't say anything. But from his expression, I could tell it didn't matter. It's normal for him to think that way. Well then, Alan, find a place where there are no people. Don't let the chick embarrass itself in public. Alan quickly led us to a desolate basement. I didn't expect there to be such an open space in the manor. I eagerly told the chick that we should start with the wooden sword. The chick handed me the sword with a bit of disdain. I tightened my grip on the sword. I got into a ready fighting stance. The chick praised me, saying, Third young master, your grip on the sword is very skilled. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. I thought to myself, skilled. Ha! The people I've killed in my past life pile up with a certain race. I stood on top, shoulder to shoulder with the heavens. I charged forward with my sword. And shouted at him, Little chick. Even if it's a wooden sword, you have to give it your all. Look at my attack. The little chick calmly defends against my assault. With a loud crack, my sword deflects. At this moment, the little chick sees me hit in the leg. Thinking to herself, he really is a novice. How could he face a level 4 swordsmanship expert like this? To avoid trouble if the third young master loses, let's just scare him a bit. Just as he was sounding off, the rocket was already pressed against him, at his throat. The battle is over. You lost, chicken. The chicken looked on in disbelief at the scene before him. Butler Allen looked at me in utter disbelief. And I seriously told the little chick that if this were a real sword, you would already be a corpse. Didn't I say to give it your all? The little chick is quite confused. How did the third young master move here? Is this really the first time picking up a sword? The third young master's sword is so fast. This unyielding third young master of the swordsmanship has never rested. Yet, he managed to defeat the powerful 4th level swordsman in just 3 moves. Just now, I held my sword to the knight's throat, and told him that if this were a real sword, you'd be dead. In Butler Allen's eyes, he thought his young master would be defeated by the knight's move. The refining will soon come to an end. However, what he didn't expect was that the young master before him was so calm and composed. With each move, he was not only very skilled, but also incredibly fierce in his attacks. Allen understood that if the young master had a real sword in his hand, the knight would undoubtedly be doomed. He doesn't understand that swordsmanship never rests. The young man who has never even touched a sword. Why is it so strong now? Is this what is called genius? Even a genius can't reach this level. And I jokingly said to James that he was a chick. You are only 25 years old this year, right? When did you start practicing? The timid little chicken hesitantly told me that he is 23 years old. He started practicing at 18. I couldn't help but praise him for his fighting spirit. You reached the 4th level in just 5 years, although you started late. This progress is still impressive. So I decided to delve deeper into his potential. The chick has quite a bit of potential. If he trains properly, he could reach the 7th or even 8th rank. It's truly ridiculous. Such a talent has been ordered by his superiors to guard a sea. I admit, I threw away the wooden sword, and picked up a real sword. I smiled and said to the chick, I'm a bit satisfied with you now. Now let's duel with real swords. But the chick worriedly said to me, third young master, you could get hurt with real swords. Hearing him say that, left me speechless. Come on, chick, can't you see the situation clearly? I'll give you some advice. Confidence is a good thing, but arrogance is not. You think my winning just now was merely luck, right? That's why I call you little chick. This time, I'll let you make the first move. If you can last 3 moves against me, I'll consider it a win for you. At this moment, the little chick could hardly contain their anger at my provocation. The wooden sword lunged at me fiercely. At that moment, I also charged forward. I didn't expect the little chick to get so easily angered. No wonder he's still a trainee knight. Just then, our swords clashed together. With just a light strike, I knocked the little chick's sword to the ground. My sword was once again pressed against his neck. I struck a victorious pose and told him, little chick, you've already died twice today, and he incredulously asked me how I did it. I pulled back the sword from his neck, and told him how it was done. You wouldn't understand even if I told you. This is advanced technique. Are you convinced now? If not, let's have another match. He was clearly not convinced. In a fit of anger, he ran off to get a real sword. At that moment, I made a face at Alan. Alan bet me, but I won. The butler Alan sighed and told me he knew. I asked him if he could take care of my sister. Can you do it? Alan bowed deeply to me, and swore on his life that he was willing to pay any price for this. At that moment, Xiaoji also took a real sword and told me that this time he absolutely wouldn't be like Gang. I raised my sword at this moment. I began with a flourish. I grinned at Xiaoji and said, interesting. Interesting, are you using fighting spirit? The little chick said it would fight me with spirit. The little chick expressed it wasn't for my young master. Come at me with all you've got. And I swung my sword with great force toward him. The little chick once again blocked my spirit attack. He didn't understand why, despite taking my hit, he still couldn't counter the third young master's assault. He only felt quite clever, so domineering. After a while, he could no longer hold on, his sword slipped from his hand and he staggered backward. At this moment, I was standing on him. Little chick, I haven't even exerted myself and you already fell. Is it over so soon? But little chick incredulously asked me, young master, have you really never practiced swordsmanship? How do you possess such immense strength? Yes, the chick in front of me has been knocked down by me. This will indeed disrupt his worldview. It's actually quite simple. Typically, people distribute their fighting spirit evenly throughout their body. This is how they enhance their power. But I'm different. I concentrate my fighting spirit in one area. I raise my sword and ask him, the chick, do you really want to become a? He doesn't understand why the third young master is asking him this. Aside from becoming a, what else can he do? At that moment, I leisurely tell him what he can do. You can be a hound that only follows my commands. I guarantee this will be more exciting than your life as a. Follow me. The most useless third young master of the Xiaoji family actually mastered the Wuji sword. Even the powerful swordsman couldn't stop the third young master's attack. And after I knocked him to the ground, ask him if he will be my loyal dog. He was horrified and asked me if I would be your dog. What's good for me? I heard him say that. Couldn't help but sigh. And tell him what to do. No questions asked. Are you just thinking about getting something? But it doesn't matter. Being my loyal dog gives you strength and power. As long as you want, I can give it to you. Listen to me. The chick asked me what exactly he needed to do. I stared at the chick seriously, and told him to eliminate all those who obstruct me. Also, to protect my safety. My words left both the chick and Alan shocked. The chick lay on the ground and asked me, young master, who do you want me to kill? I lifted my foot off him, and tell him to go kill my brother. I'm only giving you 24 hours. Little chick, I hope you make the right choice. After finishing the couplet, Butler Alan helped me loosen up. He asked me, young master, do you really believe that squire? What if the Marchioness finds out? Things are going to get complicated. I heard Alan say that to me. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I don't believe Alan at all. This gap discriminates against the Marchioness. That woman is not so exceptional. Even though he really wants to get rid of me, he won't take action against me now. His precious son is now afraid of water. Not to mention that the Marquis wants to use me as a bargaining chip to control my sister. Even if he wants to harm me, do you think the Marquis would just let it go? Speaking of which, I sneered. Besides, who in this world could kill me? Even if it's the Fairy Lord, Dragon Lord. Even the Orc King, such a defiant being, cannot do anything to me. The thought of the Marquis plotting against me is laughable, truly laughable. What can a mere shrew do to me? Once Alan finishes with me, I'll confidently tell him, Alan, unless I wish to die myself. Otherwise, no one can kill me. Alan asked me what I really wanted to do. I looked at Alan and told him that if he wanted to know, he should follow me secretly tomorrow. Alan asked in confusion if I wasn't planning to take him with me. I firmly told him he couldn't come, and I instructed Alan to make sure to follow me quietly. Alan nodded at me to indicate he understood. At this moment, the little chick angrily ran towards the Duke's residence. He thought to himself that although the third young master is a genius, it's absurd to expect me to act like a dog. He doesn't have the strong family backing that the second young master has. Not even one of the vassals supports him. The little chick thought of the third young master who had humiliated him today. He secretly resented that he had been frightened by a child like that. He couldn't help but smile grimly. If I tell the Marchioness about this, it would be quite an achievement. That despicable Marchioness actually made my sister drink a bottle of Lafite from 82. And she didn't even let my sister refuse. She even wants to use my sister as a tool for gaining power. After getting married, she laughed and told my sister that her brother Jack actually wants to take a squire for himself. He's still too young. He would never dream that the knight was his brother. Does he really think he can take me down with just a little bravado? It's just too ridiculous. His sister didn't refute this. She could only agree and smile, saying that Jack is really too naive. Because if she sided with Jack, the family's pressure on her brother would be even greater. The Marchioness praised him for being so sensible, and promised to find him a marriage partner as soon as possible. He then came up behind his sister. He ominously told her that if she liked any man or did such things, he would make sure they suffered greatly. At that moment, I was cultivating my fighting spirit. In just 5 hours, I had advanced a level. I had already reached the strength of a second-tier swordsman. This left Butler Allen in disbelief, because it took him 2 months to rise from level 1 to level 2. Yet his young master only took 5 hours. I lay in bed and asked Alan what time it was. Alan took out his 24K gold pocket watch and looked. He told me, "Young master, it is now 5:48 p.m. I hurriedly got up. I didn't expect it was already dinner time. Alan quickly asked if the young master had prepared steak for you as usual. I shook my head to indicate it wasn't necessary. I'm going to the Marquis's residence. The people at the Marquis's residence should be starting dinner by now. Alan, don't stop me. I just want to say hello to them. After all, I'm going to be away from home for a while." At this moment, everyone at the Marquis's residence is having dinner. The dining table was silent. At that moment, I kicked the door open with a bang, and shouted, "Why is it so gloomy at dinner? Are we about to lose the country?" This startled my sister. My father was quite angry at my rudeness, but I boldly told them that I am from a distinguished Marquis's house. "Esteemed third young master, there's no place for me here, right? As a family, we should sit down together in harmony to eat." I took a seat. I grabbed a chicken leg and took a big bite. Not bad, not bad. The taste is great. It would be even better if it were Orland style. But compared to what Alan did, it's pretty much the same. My behavior made the second brother and the Marchioness opposite me quite displeased. I ignored their hungry looks. I patted my belly to show I was full. Just as I was licking the chicken grease off my fingers, my father called my name. "Jack, did you come here to say something?" Hearing my father's words, I let out a cold laugh, and playfully told him the truth. I really have something to say. Otherwise, why would I come to such a lifeless place? Don't you think so? Father, this so-called useless third young master understood the essence of the sword in just 5 minutes. It's because he knows it is as vital as life itself. His sister was once again threatened and humiliated, so he kicked open the door of the Marquis's mansion. Then he casually sat down at the dining table. He grabbed a chicken leg. He tried hard to ignore the cold stares from everyone at the table. His father saw the scene before him. He angrily asked if I wanted to say something. At that moment, my icy gaze told him he guessed right. Otherwise, why would I come to this dump? When my father heard this, he scolded me for being so rude. I retorted, asking why he was being so serious. When the family has dinner, we should be happy. We must laugh. My sister saw us in a standoff. He hurried to pull me outside and said, but I raised my hand to stop him. I told him, sister, you need to be quiet for a moment. Then I fixed my gaze on my marquee father, looking down on him, to indicate that I would be going to school tomorrow. If anyone dares to bully my sister again, then I can only twist their head off. After I said that, I smiled slightly. I told my father that I wasn't joking. The Marchioness looked furious upon hearing this. She couldn't understand how I dared to speak like that. My father told me it was fine. No one would bully my sister. I was quite surprised. He agreed to my request. But aside from that, I have another score to settle. Since someone bullied my sister, then my brother will let you bear the brunt of my anger. I heard that after I beat you up, you've been afraid of water. You don't dare to drink anything. Is it true? Then you must really like this bottle of 82 Lafite. Saying this, I poured the entire bottle of red wine onto the table. My brother looked on in horror. It was as if he was back in that day, filled with fear at my control. At this moment, the Marchioness couldn't hold back anymore. She angrily scolded me for my lack of upbringing. How dare I be so disrespectful? Come here to act wild. But I ignored him. I turned around and asked everyone present where the barking was coming from. Seeing this scene, my sister was restless. She couldn't understand how her usually weak brother could become so strong. But my actions and insulting words made the Marchioness tremble all over. She gritted her teeth and said fiercely that she would not let me go. After hearing his words, I stood there in shock for 2 seconds. Then I turned back and told him, it's you. Ah, let me see how you won't let me go. After I left, the furious Marchioness cursed me. Even the maid at home said, I didn't expect the seemingly lovely third young master to infuriate the lady like this. And I was just lectured by the sister who chased me out. Nothing unexpected happened all night. Soon, the next day, I went to school. I never expected this myself. As the third young master of the Marquis's residence, I was sent off by only a few people. This carriage is quite nice, though. But the knight escorting me looks gloomy and defiant. He has a strength level of 6. His gaze towards me is also evasive. It's very abnormal. I know he was instructed by the Marchioness. He planned to attack me on the way. I don't know what kind of choice the chick traveling with me made. My sister expressed her concern about me going alone. She fears the Marchioness is scheming something against me. She intends to personally escort me to school. And I smiled. Tell my sister not to bother with all this. Many things will change in the future. And sister, please believe me. Alan, you should go back too. Don't forget what I told you that day. You can rest assured. He definitely can't kill me. After my sister and Alan left, I fell asleep in the carriage. However, the most powerful knight in the group, ranked 6, was watching me sleep. There was a killing intent in his eyes. This contemptible person from the Marquis family had actually mastered the wind sword shadow. On the way to school, those ordered by the Marquis were powerless against me. They not only aimed to break my limbs, they even want to destroy all the fighting energy I've cultivated. Even the Gap Knight, little G, whom I valued, has now made his choice. He stands against me. But what does it matter? I look at the arrogant crowd before me. I didn't expect the Marchioness to be so ruthless. The 6-star knight who turned back drew his sword. And you told me that although you have great talent in swordsmanship, unfortunately, your meager fighting spirit is nothing in front of me. And in this desolate, dense forest, they do not know that I feel as if I have returned home. Although I have lived peacefully here for a few days in this new life, the scars of the past have long left their mark on my soul. I called out, Alan, are you nearby? Yet the silence around me allows me to hear the wind rustling through the flowers and grass. The 6-star knight laughed, saying that now no one could save me. I ignored him. I calmly said, I am haunted. I had been hiding in the mountains for 10 years. There, I met my master. I learned many things. After my master died, I came down from the mountains. But everything has changed. The whole world has undergone a transformation. Everyone thought I was just scared and delusional. What nonsense is this third young master spouting? In the next moment, I drew my sword. And with a sharp gaze, I told him, there is something I have been troubled by. That is my sister's fate. She is smart and quick-witted. Extremely talented. Yet, her kindness did not lead to a good end. When I drew my sword, the overwhelming sword aura left everyone stunned. My voice seemed to resonate throughout the heavens and the earth. Didn't you say my so-called talent and swordsmanship were nothing to speak of? Well, let me show you now what it truly means to be the tip of the arrow. I jumped up and unleashed a swift strike at them. Those who had mocked me moments ago suddenly grew serious. They understood that if this was not resolved immediately, the ones who would die would be themselves. As I raised my sword in the air, gathering energy for the strike, there was not a trace of emotion in my eyes, because they were the first sacrifices on my path of vengeance. Go bury me with my sister from my past life. I swung my sword at them. Night Chick hadn't regretted his choice until the very last second. After all, choosing the second young master with backing seemed better than the third young master with nothing. He thought he was making the right decision. What he didn't expect now was that the third young master rushing towards him was like the Grim Reaper. The third young master, who had always been seen as an idiot, had actually grasped the Infinity Sword. One move defeated 30 swordsmanship masters. Even the heavenly sword forged by his sister could not withstand this powerful force and broke. The entire scene was like a battlefield. Yet I showed no signs of emotion on my face. I calmly said, "Alan, come out. I know you're there." Alan walked out from the woods, his face filled with terror. What had just happened was hard for him to believe. He asked me, "Young master, how did you do it?" I had no secrets from Alan. I told him it was something I accomplished in Wuji prison. There are a total of 8 moves. What I just used was only the first move. I haven't explained it clearly to Alan yet. With every pain, I coughed up blood. Because this body can't handle such a powerful force yet. Alan nervously asked if I was okay. I breathlessly told him I was fine. "Quick, give me your potion." Alan quickly took it out of his pocket, and he helped me drink it. Only then did I start to recover. Alan asked me why I was so overwhelmed. If it weren't for this potion, the young master would truly die. I looked at Alan, who had a concerned expression. I told him, "I know you've always carried the potion for me, because in my last life, when I was fleeing from my father's pursuit, I was on the verge of death. It was Alan who saved me, by drinking this potion for me. At that time, I was just focused on escaping. I didn't even thank Alan." Speaking of this, my eyes were filled with longing and gratitude. "Thank you, Alan." Alan also learned from my confession that I had been reborn. I stood up and took off my clothes. I told Alan, "Knight, the chick is dead." I stepped on its head. I originally planned to train it well, then have it work for me. Unfortunately, it didn't make the right choice. I turned to look at Alan, who remained calm and silent. I was puzzled as to why Alan showed no surprise. Upon hearing about my rebirth, I asked him if he wasn't curious. Then I leaned close to his ear and asked if he wanted to know what happens in the future. Looking at me with a mischievous smile, Alan said he wasn't interested, because he felt that no matter where he went, he wouldn't die an untimely death. But when he learned about his fate from me, he suddenly looked a bit deflated. After saying that, I got into the carriage to rest for a while. Because the previous battle consumed too much stamina, Alan looked at the hell I created. He couldn't believe it. The usually gentle and easy to bully third young master actually defeated 30 people in one strike. To be precise, it was with just one sword. Then he was astonished to find that everyone's wounds were pierced through the chest, but they were not sword wounds. How did the young master manage to do that? He looked at me, who had already fallen into a deep sleep. I couldn't help but wonder, what exactly did you experience in your past life, young master? What kind of life did you live? This Marquis's residence, which people call a useless place. The young master actually cut through all obstacles to the 3 uncles. Even the heavenly sword forged for him by his sister with refined iron has become dull. After exhausting too much energy, I had just rested for 2 hours. I was loudly woken up by Alan again. I was in a bad mood upon waking up. I asked Alan what was going on. It turned out he was worried about my health. Although I had taken the medicine, Alan still wasn't reassured. I told Alan not to worry. Right now, apart from the pain, there's nothing serious wrong. After hearing this, Alan stopped asking questions. He then took out a bag for me to see. Inside were the knight's belongings. There were a total of 5 bottles of high-quality potions and dozens of gold coins. Seeing this, I couldn't help but admire how impressive it was to be from the Marquis's household. There were so many good items. Alan asked me if I wasn't going to drink another potion. I told him it wouldn't be useful now. Looking at the gloomy Alan, I took out the 3 potions inside and returned them to him. Alan didn't expect to exchange 1 potion for 3. He asked me what I planned to do next. The young master has dealt with your escorts. The Marquis will definitely suspect you. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard Aaron say that. What could he do to me if he doubts me? Aaron thinks the Marquis will definitely summon you back. I then asked Aaron if he wanted to make another bet with me. Aaron immediately turned his head away and refused to answer, because he thought he would lose again. It's really funny that Aaron is getting wise and not falling for it. After saying that, Aaron knelt down on one knee in front of me. "Young master, I believe you have your own plans." I asked him if anyone else discovered him coming here. Alan reassured me. Before coming here, he left a clone at the other residence to clean. The clone technique is a level 9 advanced magic. Only about 10 people in the entire world can see through Alan's clone. And they are all deep in the beast forest on a mission. I warned Alan. The Marquis might resort to severe torture because of today's incident. If the atmosphere turns hostile then, you should shift all the blame onto me. If the Marquis wants to kill you, just relay one message to him for me. Alan curiously asked me what that was. I looked at him with a murderous gaze. Tell him that if one day he kills you or your sister, then this day will be the day of the Marquis family's downfall. Alan stood up in fright after hearing this. I told Alan not to be nervous. These are just hypotheticals. I only hope the Marquis knows his limits. To play the role of a father well in front of my sister. This is a chance I'm giving him in this lifetime. Before Alan left, he asked me if I really had to go to the academy. Looking at Alan's expression, I knew he wanted to leave here with me. Although that would be interesting, it wasn't the right time yet. I patted Alan and reminded him to take good care of my sister for me. After Alan left, I also packed my things. I got on the horse and prepared to leave. Although I was reluctant to part with my sister and Alan, I have things I must do. That is to find my teacher, Milos. He taught me how to survive in my past life. He also gave me the strength to take revenge. He helped me transform from a nobody into a person. My teacher's dark magic once made the whole world tremble. I thought I would see him again. At that moment, my heart was excited again after a long time. This Marquis's third son, regarded as a fool by others, actually wielded the master sword to slay a giant dragon. After saying goodbye to Alan, I arrived at a village. Seeing the children playing and laughing here, I felt that this village must be very livable. I walked into an inn to take a rest. It's very noisy inside. Some people are drinking and having fun. They are chatting animatedly. The golden retriever in the shop seems very happy to see me. It's wagging its tail excitedly. I found a corner to sit down. I hope no one will bother me here. After I sat down, a voice called out to me, saying it was the first time seeing a young guest come alone. I turned around and couldn't tell if he was the owner or a worker. He asked if I was here to eat or to stay. I looked at the scar on his face and his obviously mismatched physique. He didn't look like someone who runs an inn at all. He looked more like a mercenary. Then I took out 2 gold coins. Let him bring me some simple food and drinks, and book another room. I didn't expect him to smile and say 1 gold coin would be enough. For food, I ordered apple pie and beef Wellington. He even teased me for being a kid and wouldn't serve me beer. He brought me a glass of milk to help me grow. I petted the golden retriever in the shop, thinking this person is nice. He could see I was from out of town. They really didn't overcharge. Is life here too comfortable? That makes sense, the war hasn't broken out yet. Watching the golden retriever cutely trying to charm me, wagging its tail. I laugh and tell him, "You silly dog, you have no idea what terrifying things are coming. Still wagging your tail excitedly, huh?" Just then, I heard the table next to me discussing that the royal family is gathering strong fighters to hunt magical beasts. A large number of martial masters are participating in the battle. Even the most powerful Ironblood Knights of the Marquisate are involved. I don't know why Teslan would undertake such a futile effort. I know about this battle from my previous life. The Beast Forest is located in the Greenland Canyon. It is a neutral area in the world. Here live half-orcs, goblins, fairies, elves, and even giant pythons. The blood of these magical beasts can be used to make potions. Ogre blubber can be used to create bows and arrows. Special magical beasts can be used to forge weapons and armor. Fairy feathers are popular decorations among the aristocracy. Elves, due to their stunning beauty, are often kept as pets. Their campaign against the threatening beast forest was driven by human greed. Unfortunately, the outcome of this campaign was a failure. The consequences were dire. The Ironblood Knights lost 1/3 of their forces. Other noble factions also suffered similar losses. Due to this failure, the king lost his star. He also lost the support of the nobles. The kingdom began to fall apart at that time. And a year later, civil war broke out. Just as I was listening to a few people talking, they actually mentioned the third young master of the Marquis's residence. I immediately perked up my ears. I listened more attentively. They said this third young master of the Marquis's residence actually used dark magic, and this fool was even thrown into prison. A few people laughed heartily. They even said that the idiot young master of the Marquis's house has no talent. How could he possibly learn dark magic? He must have learned some lowly skills from unsavory characters. At that moment, the woman from earlier brought me food and drink. She asked me what was so amusing, that it made me laugh like this. I couldn't help but find it amusing after hearing that. Ha ha ha, I unconsciously laughed along. If it weren't for the kind woman sitting in front of me, I might have taken them all to task. After all, discussing nobles is a serious offense. I told him there was nothing to be happy about. It was just that I heard them say the young master of the Marquis house is an idiot. I thought it was interesting. That's why I eavesdropped a bit. And this woman told me, most people judge things they haven't seen with their own eyes based on hearsay. But he's different. He makes judgments only after seeing it for himself. I watched him finish speaking and laugh without saying anything. He picked up a piece of steak and put it in his mouth. Although it's not as good as what Alan makes, the taste is quite good. However, at that moment, this woman actually smiled at me and said that the third young master of the Marquis's house is so handsome. The rumors saying he is an idiot must be false. This third young master of the Marquis's house, mockingly called the big fool by the world, actually held a pair of 2s and 3s, gambling all his gold coins. This was not long ago. I looked at the woman who recognized me, the scar on his face, the muscles on his body, and these mercenaries who are regulars. I asked him if he was the head of the Adventurers Guild branch here. He was taken aback at first. Then he laughed. I wasn't guessing randomly, because every village has mercenaries bustling through the streets to make a living. Some are hired to participate in territorial wars, while others take simple commissions to find lost pets, or they become hunters of monsters. The Adventurers Guild is where mercenaries find job opportunities. To meet the needs of the mercenaries, the guild is often located near accommodations like inns. I asked him if he was so free. He still has the mind to run the tavern himself. He felt quite helpless upon hearing that. The Adventurers Guild is right next door, but because this territory is small, there haven't been many job opportunities lately, so he can only scrape by like this. Looking at him chatting and laughing so easily, I can't help but sigh. Even if I am the notorious idiot girl of the Marquis 8, I'm at most just a topic of conversation for the mercenaries at their tavern. But to be recognized by someone from the guild in this remote mountain village, did he know about what happened back then? Just a few dozen minutes after I arrived here, the village guards stopped me and asked about my purpose for being here. I took out the Marquisite's token. Suddenly, the guards became very respectful towards me. Right after I entered, they didn't forget to bow at a 90-degree angle. They seemed afraid I would be angry. Their previous negligence. I felt it was something they heard from the guard at the city gate. Even if it was important intelligence, it's very dangerous for a lord to privately contact the guards. He laughed and asked me if I was worried about him. I suppose so. After all, this woman in front of me is quite friendly. Even though she has heard the rumors about me, her attitude towards me isn't as bad as that of the second son in those nights. He smiled and reached out his hand to introduce himself. His name is Avanoya. He is the head of the Avanoya village branch of the Alois Guild. I also politely shook his friendly hand. I said hello, but I realized that both the village name and his name are Avanoya. I understood something immediately, so I asked him if he was the eldest or the second in command here. He smiled and told me he is the third here. The lord here is his elder brother. I praised him, saying he is really impressive. Usually, it's commoners who become mercenaries. I didn't expect a noble to be doing this kind of work. And most nobles at your age are already married, right? He told me he enjoys this job. And his family doesn't want to sell it either. Hearing this, I fell into deep thought. It's completely the opposite of my family's approach. I really envy that. What an interesting family. He held the golden retriever in his arms. He asked me why I came here alone. What about your guards? I took a bite of my steak. Told him, you're an idiot. You don't deserve guards. Hearing this, he was stunned. This third young master of the Marquis's residence is indeed different from the rumors. I asked Avanoya to help me find a few bodyguards. Traveling alone is really exhausting. He asked me how many I needed, and how much I would pay. I held up my hand and told him a maximum of 5 people. It would be best if they had camping experience. Cooking skills would be even better. As for how much to give, I will advance 2 gold coins per person, and pay 3 gold coins upon arrival. Avenue heard this. His eyes lit up. The third young master is really generous. After all, they are protecting the merchants. Each person can get a maximum of 30 silver coins. I took out 3 gold coins and gave them to Avinoa. I asked him to prepare what we needed, a cart and horses. If possible, buy them. Avinoa took the coins and smiled, saying I was really generous. He then gave me the key to my room and told me to rest well. Everything else is on him. This department head is such an interesting woman. She must be very reliable. And those flies should have a hard time getting into this village. I came into the room. I laid down on the bed. A wave of exhaustion hit me. I fell asleep in this room. I'm just a total idiot. The golden retriever waking me up is the alarm I set for myself. Yesterday, I had a dream. In the dream, I was still that useless person from my past life. This is my first encounter with the teacher. He laughed at my weakness. He told me that kindness is not a crime. Incompetence is. Jack, do you want to change yourself? At that moment, Avinoa didn't knock. He walked in directly and told me he had already prepared everything I needed for the journey. As I stepped out with my luggage, he informed me that he had arranged everything for me. He even prepared a luxury carriage. He also selected several experienced escorts. I looked at the few people in front of me and hoped to learn from them. Aren't those the same people who slandered me yesterday? At that moment, a middle-aged man approached me. He reached out his hand and said, he was John Doe, the leader of the Firewild mercenary group escorting me to Rock Mountain. I found the name unbelievable, because the meaning of this name refers to an unidentified corpse. I couldn't believe he would use this name. Although I knew it was a false name, I politely shook his hand and told him that his name was really interesting. He told me that the journey from here to Rock Mountain isn't short. Along the way, there are only a few small villages where you can rest. So we need to camp twice. Among us, 2 people used to be chefs, and he also has extensive camping experience. I listened to him talk for so long that I was almost bored. I asked him if all of this meant I didn't have to do anything. He grinned at me. He said yes. Then let's set off immediately. I've already lifted the box. Before we left, I turned to look at Avinoa. I thank him for introducing me to a group of interesting mercenaries. Avinoa told me not to mention it. These people are really seasoned. But I know this captain is not an ordinary mercenary. Even though my physical condition isn't as good as in my past life, my eyesight and intuition are still sharp. Alan is a level 9 magician because he concealed his identity and power. However, this mercenary leader in front of me is definitely level 8. Did he also hide his true abilities? I smiled and said goodbye to Avinoa, promising that we would meet again soon. He hoped we could drink beer together then. I playfully told him that if he was treating, I would consider it. Soon, I set off with the mercenaries towards Shurian Mountain. The weather is nice today. After a night of rest, I feel much better than before. I suddenly noticed the mercenary leader staring at me. I didn't know what that meant. I got up and abruptly asked another mercenary next to me, "You must have heard of who I am, right?" He said he hadn't. He only knew I was a noble young master of high status. I smiled and asked him if it was true. He told me it was. The department head said you should be traveling the world. After hearing that, I mentioned I was curious about something. I fumbled in my pocket. Then I threw an article to him. He held it in his hands and looked closely. "Isn't this an article from the nobility?" I smiled and asked him if he recognized this article. "This is an article about my doomed family, the Ballantyre Marquis family, and I am the useless young master you mentioned yesterday. This so-called good-for-nothing Marquis's third son actually managed to eat 10 bowls of rice while camping in the wild. Before eating, I even pointed at the cook and asked why he called me an idiot. And I was thrown into prison for using black magic." Looking at the few people trembling in front of me, I find it quite amusing. After all, it's all been made very clear. They now know my identity. And the rumors about my use of dark magic are spreading like wildfire. This person trembles and says sorry to me. I tell him he's not wrong. After all, my teacher is a highly skilled dark magician. As his student, even if I am a swordsman, it's impossible for me not to understand dark magic. I asked him why I shouldn't use my fists, but instead resort to dark magic. I pointed to the person next to him and asked, "And you? Why didn't you stop him when he scolded me yesterday?" But when cursing the king, he covered his mouth so tightly. Does that really make me very sad? The man quickly apologized. He said he was blind to the truth. Everyone present, except John, looked panicked. I think this might be because the department head only informed him of my identity. I patted the man's shoulder. Tell him it's okay. Forget about yesterday's events. After all, we've shared hardships for several days. I grabbed his shoulder tightly. He was incredulous. How could a child be so strong? Dan Mang said that the third young master is right. I hope you'll take care of me in the future. When it was time for dinner in the evening, one of them said to me, he now understands that the rumors are indeed not trustworthy. I asked him what he meant by that, confused. He told me that I am different from ordinary nobles. They are generally spoiled and never work, and you actually washed the dishes yourself. It's truly hard to believe. Others also agreed with this person's words. I didn't expect that my small gesture would make these people look at me differently. I just thought the lavish dishes they made, the beef pies and pudding sausages, looked really delicious. I even wanted to hire him as my private chef. I only felt satisfied and let out a long breath when my belly was full. Although thinking like this feels a bit unfair to Alan, I told everyone that I was washing the dishes to thank them for such a delicious dinner. After all, I consider myself a foodie. After explaining, I asked him who was on duty tonight. He told me they would draw lots to decide. He asked if I wanted to participate. I pouted, indicating that I was just a kid. You have to go to bed early to grow taller. It's too boring at night. I started chatting with these mercenaries. I asked them if they knew how many dragons there are in this world. Everyone looked very puzzled. Dragons were said to have been completely eradicated by the legendary founding king hundreds of years ago. This great founding king, along with his 2 assistants, eliminated all the dragons that once ruled the western continent, and he established the Teslan Empire. Over time, it has become the present-day Teslan Kingdom. It has even become a vassal of the Tulkan Empire. These are the facts everyone knows. I started counting on my fingers. First, there are 2 dragon lords in the Black Sea. The Tulkan Empire's royal family has a small path. The Beast Forest has 5. As far as I know, there are also 8 that roam around after taking human form. So this continent has at least 16 divine dragons. Everyone was very surprised to hear my words. I knew they definitely wouldn't believe what I said, because divine dragons only appear in legends. So far, no one has seen them in person. I asked everyone if this story was interesting. The reason divine dragons cannot interfere in human affairs. It's because there is a covenant restricting their actions. John asked me what I meant. Was it true that the founding king didn't actually kill the dragon? I smiled. I told him that the despicable guy didn't eliminate the dragon. Instead, he negotiated. To be precise, it was those 2 unknown assistants who did it. I told everyone that the continent we know is not the entire world. To put it simply, we are on the West continent, while the East continent lies across the Black Sea. Not to mention the little dragon. The Dragon Lord carries a mission passed down through generations, to guard the barrier of the Black Sea. Although I don't know the origin of the barrier, I've heard it was created thousands of years ago to separate the 2 continents. The Dragon Lords have made it their mission to guard the barrier for generations. Likewise, I'm also curious about what events on the Eastern continent are being blocked by the Dragon Lords. After everyone heard my words, they actually burst into laughter. A mercenary stopped me and said, "Boss, you really know how to tell a story. It seems like you really need someone to chat with." I sighed, thinking, forget it. Although I didn't expect them to believe me, I still felt a bit down. This Marquis's 3rd son, treated like worthless mud. I actually grasped the ultimate meaning of the sword in just 3 minutes. I even held my sword and confronted the 8, a powerful fighter. Just now, I talked about the existence of dragons. No one believed me. So, I went to the river to take a bath. While thinking about the events of the past few days, I originally thought that the mercenary leader, John Dao, was a spy sent by Tulkan to the kingdom. And that department head is also very suspicious. These people cannot be ruled out for now. After all, I only need mercenaries who can serve as bodyguards. But this woman introduced me to a hidden powerhouse, with an 8th level fighting spirit. Even the current leader of the Ironblood Knights is only at the 8th level. In other words, a talent who would be popular anywhere, is now the leader of an obscure mercenary group. Could there be some hidden reason? I gazed at the full moon in the sky, lost in thought. But now, instead of uncovering his true identity, I have something more important to do. I took advantage of the rest I got at the inn and in the carriage. I healed the damage caused to my body by Yenling last time. I gathered my energy with my hands. I feel like this should be fine now, but even so, I still need to find the teacher. Although it's very likely that John Dao is not a spy for Turkin, I can't take him with me. After putting on my clothes, I decided to ask him directly. When everyone saw me, they asked why I had been soaking for so long, but I didn't answer them. At that moment, I held a sword in my hand, and told everyone that I had been worried about one thing, so I didn't have the mood to soak in the water for too long. John Dao asked me what was going on. I looked at him sharply, and asked him if he really didn't know. I pointed my sword at him, pointing at an 8th tier chi master. What worries me is that, as an owner of 8th tier chi, why would you become a mercenary? Where I'm going is very important to me, and it is of great significance, so I don't plan to take someone who hides things from me like you. These words left the mercenary group members stunned. Their captain was actually at rank 8. What's going on? John Dao told him to shut up. Don't interrupt young Master San. He then stood up and said, alright, just treat me like I'm Badger. What does the young master want now? I'll tell him. Earlier, I told you all a funny story. Now it's your turn to tell me one. John asked me what would happen if I refused, and I told him with a smile, if you can't convince me, then you're as good as dead. Then my gaze instantly turned cold. I asked him if he was a spy sent by Turkin. The other members of the mercenary group I radiated killing intent towards trembled. I told John Island, and that woman named Jin that next time we meet, we should drink beer together. If you are a spy, well, he is quite pitiable. This made John frown immediately. He asked me why I suddenly brought up the cocoon. I thought he was foolish. Even after saying that, he still didn't understand. I asked him if he wasn't curious about whether the woman's last entry was beer. After saying that, I showed an innocent smile. I asked him how he felt. Things have gotten interesting, haven't they? Looking at John in front of me, hesitating and panicking, I said this to him. Yet he still hasn't activated his aura. I can't tell if he's being cautious or just hesitating. But at least he has some sense. I can't control my strength well right now. So if I strike, it could be too hard. Because the moment he uses his aura, I will draw my sword. I asked him with a smile whether he wanted to live or die. Such a simple question. I'll give you 1 minute. I hope you can make a wise choice. At that moment, John recalled that day at Jane's inn. Jane told him that the third young master, almost abandoned by the Marquis family, was not as he seemed, and he sensed from the third young master's gaze that he seemed to be hiding a lot. He just asked me to help find a bodyguard. So I'm looking into this mysterious third young master. Maybe that kid could change our lives. At this moment, John thought that this third young master was indeed different. No one would believe that someone with such eyes was a fool abandoned by his family. He looked at the innocent and pure-faced third young master, and had a bad feeling. It felt as if he were a herbivore standing before a lion. All his instincts told him that this young master was very dangerous. This Marquis's younger son, treated like a muggle, had managed to learn the Alpha Strike in just 10 minutes. He even threatened an 8-dan swordsmanship master with a sword, demanding to reveal his true identity. Yet the 8-dan expert, John, couldn't understand how this boy had figured out his rank. Could it be that Jin told him? Then John shook his head, indicating it was impossible. He believed Jin. Even if he had said something, he would have told him in advance. But seeing the boy in front of him pointing a sword at him, he asked in confusion if he really was an 8th degree. Do you have enough strength to kill me, young master? But he saw my eyes. He doesn't understand why a child's gaze can carry such heavy killing intent. This boy is really just a child. Should I speak honestly about it? Or should I continue to conceal it? If I were to say something, how should I start? This suffocating feeling reminded him of the countless choices he faced during his years as a mercenary. Then he closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. He had always been lucky. This time, he decided to trust his instincts. And at that moment, I shouted that time was up. Since you're unwilling to speak, I have no choice but to take action. I had just gathered my fighting spirit. I heard John start to speak. So I stopped. He asked if I understood my sister's current situation. I put down my sword. I signaled for him to continue. This is how things were. John told me the love story of a noble lady and a commoner. The content is not long. The plot is quite ordinary. He met Jian when he reached the 7th stage of combat. He was 19 years old. They fell in love at first sight. Until today, they are still very much in love. I only understood this after hearing it. No wonder this woman has never married. Although their social statuses are vastly different. John, the Taoist, as an 8-to-1 chi holder, should be quite prominent in Teslan. And he's not bad looking. Yet he chooses to be a mercenary. Could it be that he got into trouble? But looking at that woman's character, his family itself is probably not very interested in power. I asked John. It's precisely for this reason that he became the head of the local adventurers guild branch. And you work as a mercenary under him. So you approached me because it was profitable? Looking at John, I said. Indeed. I don't know whether to believe him. But stories like this can be made up easily. I used the same strength to look at John, and asked him if he remembered the story about the divine dragon I just told them. Why the Tulkun Empire raises little divine dragons. Masters refer to those who have achieved rank 10. Yet even those masters do not know that there are higher ranks still existing deep in this world. That is to say, it does not use fighting spirit. It is a monster transcending through the power of the soul. Everyone listened to my words, and showed surprised expressions. I also told them that in 2 years, the Knight Heinz, who protects the royal family of the Turton Empire, will break through the limits of mastery, become the strongest swordsman on the continent. He will continue the forgotten history of the Transcenders. But ironically, this guy didn't become a Transcender through his own power. Half of the bones and blood in his body are from a divine dragon. Because of this crazy act, he has turned into a flyer. A monster of the flying dragon. John didn't understand what I was saying and how it related to the current situation. I told him that the Turkan Empire sent out countless spies to gather intelligence, to confirm whether other countries had the divine dragon. I looked at John, and saw that he seemed to believe me, thinking I sounded like I was telling a story. This dispelled his doubts, and let him remember to send me an invitation when he gets married. Just as I was passing by him, I sensed a trace of killing intent. I had no hesitation at all. I drew my sword and stabbed towards John Dao. At this moment, the 8th level master John Dao had yet to draw his sword. I told him, I was the one who suspected you first, so I spare your life, but this is the last time. If I sense killing intent from you again, it won't just be you. I will take out everyone here. At this moment, the panicked members urged me to put down my sword and talk it over calmly. I sighed helplessly. The hard-won thaw-in relations has now turned stiff again. But there's nothing we can do about it, because we were originally in a contractual relationship. This so-called brain-dead Marquis Husan Shao actually got in the mood to tell ghost stories to the mercenary group. Everyone has clearly gotten used to the young master always telling these chilling tales. If it weren't for his noble status, he would have probably been slapped already. But the mercenary group members do not understand why the leader, a master of the 8th rank, with the strength to become a remarkable figure, is living a humble life as a mercenary. However, considering that the leader saved their lives, and they have lived together for so many years, they understand that the leader may have unavoidable circumstances. They even hope that one day his mercenary group can become one of the top teams, and their leader would become the king of mercenaries in the world. Only John knows in his heart that the king of mercenaries is not something a mere 8th rank can achieve. Even among mercenaries at the master rank, there are at least 4. They then stopped discussing this topic, and prepared to continue listening to my story. At that moment, I patiently began to tell them about an event from 23 years ago. There's a simple-minded guy with strong limbs, and the fairy lord have an indescribable relationship. Everyone was shocked and said they had never heard of this before. It immediately sparked interest. They were ready to start gossiping. I guess it makes sense. After all, these two races are in opposition to each other. Moreover, they often wage war. These two races are known as the twin evils of the Warcraft forest. They can also be called the guardians of the forest. They are two races that are so opposed, yet their leaders have fallen in love. Originally, the two races coexisted harmoniously in the forest. Even during the early days of the forest overlord Black Hero becoming the half-orc lord, they still maintained a peaceful relationship. John Dao and his team couldn't wait to ask me what went wrong later. I couldn't help but smirk. I told them not to worry. The reason is that everyone knows about the relationship between the Dark Hero and the Fairy Lord, whether human, fairy, or beastman. Even though they are different races, their basic desires are the same. They all have the same obsession with power. Due to some discontent among the factions of both races with their lords, they secretly formed an alliance under the pretext of their relationship. They plotted to drive out their respective lords. But ultimately, their ambitions were not realized. To this day, the lords of the two races remain unchanged. However, they have abandoned love, and chosen to strengthen their respective races. After hearing this, John thought today's story was quite interesting, but he didn't know whether the story was true or not. However, there were some things he was aware of. A few years ago, the relationship between orcs and elves was not as tense as it is now. Moreover, starting from 10 years ago, the two lords had already earned the title of double demons. The fairies secretly learned the combat techniques that only half-orcs would know, and the half-orcs secretly learned the elven arts from the fairies. The two races with the largest populations in the forest stole each other's secrets. As a result, the two races began to oppose each other. They also became the representative races of the forest. At this moment, I stepped forcefully on John Dao's shoe, and advised him that if he ever got caught by a half-orc or a fairy, you can tell them this story. Maybe it will give you an extra story's worth of time to live. John didn't know if it was true or not. He said that if that day ever came, he would definitely do it. After saying that, John felt hungry. He personally brought me a plate of snacks to eat. Watching me enjoy my meal, he proudly told me that this was something he personally made today. However, what I didn't know at that moment was, the news of all the soldiers escorting me having died in the mountains had already reached my father, and based on the search results, it was confirmed that the soldiers died from high-level magic. This gave my father a headache, because at that time, the Iron Blood Knights had been dispatched to the Beast Forest. Such things are happening now. He pondered whether the mastermind behind this was the king or the duke, so he immediately ordered a thorough investigation into the matter. He also inquired with his subordinates. There had been no news of his youngest son. Could he still be alive? His subordinates told him that they had not found the third young master's body. Perhaps he had escaped. He thinks that if Jack is not dead, then he is the only eyewitness. He must be found immediately. After the subordinates leave, the father is thinking about his most useless youngest son. He didn't expect him to be of some use. That third young master of the Marquis's house, treated like garbage, actually learned lightness skill and cloud stepping in just 1 minute. This is all because he has an important matter today. That is to go into the mountains to find money. It is his own teacher. Just half an hour ago, the mercenaries escorted me to Rock Mountain. I also gave them a thick bag of gold coins as a reward. When John received it, he only felt its weight. It must be at least 5 pounds. Sure enough, he opened a bag full of shiny gold coins. He quickly told me, "Young master, you've given too much." I replied that it didn't matter. It's just a little extra for the money I paid for a crepe. Think of it as a tip for you. And besides, I had my doubts before, so consider it compensation for you. Thanks to your company along the way. Otherwise I would have been bored to death. So I smiled and said goodbye to these lovely mercenaries. But to my surprise, they stood still and didn't move. A group of big men actually looked reluctant to leave. Then, John said to me, "Young master, there are some things I shouldn't really say to you, but I still want to tell you." I asked him what he meant in confusion. John no longer hesitated. He told me that being a mercenary isn't as bad as it seems. Although I don't know everything about you, young master, I feel like I know a bit. You are seen as worthless in the Marquis's house. No one supports you, third young master. I've seen many young nobles like you who are out of favor. Their fates usually don't end well. After hearing this, I glanced at the mercenaries behind him. I asked John if he wanted me to become a mercenary. At that moment, John held my shoulder and told me not to joke around. "Young master," I just said, "that being a mercenary isn't so bad. As long as you don't take dangerous jobs, you can travel the world and live a comfortable life. No other profession can offer that besides being a mercenary. And right now, I'm asking about John Island. The people behind you may not know this, but you should be very clear. If I wanted to kill you that night, you would have died. I know John Island understands. Even if I didn't use soul techniques then, someone of his 8th rank could clearly sense the danger. And John Dao feels that it's a pity precisely because he knows this. Because the young master is truly talented. And he told me he has forgotten what happened that night. After all, as someone who lives by the sword, sometimes one might hide their abilities from those around them. If the young master wants to pursue this, I am willing to accept any punishment from him. And I smiled, indicating that it didn't matter. Then I leaned into his ear and told him a little secret. That is, something big will happen in the Western continent in a few years. I told John Dao to hide. He was confused. I didn't bother to explain, because the time would come, and John Dao would understand. And I couldn't help but sigh that this was truly a terrifying thing. I told John not to let himself be deceived into risking his life for a few coins. After all, life is more important than money. After saying that, I patted John on the back and made sure he would remember my words. After saying goodbye to them, I entered the dense forest alone. Looking back at my silhouette, John said to wait a moment. I looked back. John placed his hand on his chest. With a determined look, he said to me, "Sir, may I know your name?" I smiled. He clearly knew my name, but I understood his meaning. "My name is Jack. What's your name?" This time he didn't hide it anymore. He directly revealed his true name, Dita Timo. I made a note of it. We'll meet again if fate allows. To hurry and see the teacher sooner, I channeled my energy into my feet, strolling above the forest. I landed steadily only when I was close to my destination. Now I have mastered my fighting spirit to perfection. Even my hairstyle remained intact. I crossed a few small hills and arrived at a cave entrance. I marvel at how I might be brave enough to do this, because my body is still small. Let me get out of breath. After entering the cave, I used magic to light up the darkness. I'm sure it's right here. As long as I pass through this wall, I can reach the place where the teacher is. In my previous life, I also stumbled upon this place. Back then, I was weak and helpless, driven to desperation by the Marquis's residence. This was my situation at the time. Now, everything is completely different. I bit open a bottle of potion and splashed it against the wall. Then I slowly drew the sword from my waist. I placed the sword in my palm and tightly gripped the blade with my hand. Blood poured down profusely. The third young master of the Marquis's mansion, who was used as a reliance in the defense, actually acknowledged a lowly who was only 1.2 meters tall. When I was a teacher in my past life, I hid in this cave, feeling hopeless. I intended to end this life, but my weak self couldn't make the decision. Blood and tears fell to the ground. Just because of this, became an opportunity. After they merged, it surprisingly caused the stone gate to collapse. It was here that I met the woman who changed my life. In this life, I carry the memories of my past life, and found her again. This sword shattered the stone door. As I went deeper, I didn't know why, but I actually felt a bit nervous. But that's not surprising. Even in my past life, I hadn't seen my teacher for 10 years. I don't know how far I've come. Finally found my teacher from a past life. Just like in the last life, he is still bound by chains, and his appearance is also unusual. At that moment, I slowly called out, "Teacher." My sudden appearance. He showed no signs of panic. He stared at me in silence for 30 seconds. I also recalled his teachings from my past life. In this world, whether human, divine dragon, or half-beast, there is meaning. But my teacher before me has actually lived for 400 years. His body and soul have already separated. The magic bound the two together. But the teacher's temporary solution ultimately failed. Since meeting me, the teacher lived for another 10 years. In this life, I met the teacher again. I also clearly knew he had only 13 years left. Then I heard the teacher's voice again. He asked me coldly why I called him teacher. I can no longer hold back my longing. My voice has turned choked. He doesn't know who I truly am. What my purpose here is. At this moment, I also plan to tease him. I said, "Guess." He thought I was just trying to amuse him. Then, with a cold gaze, he told me he wouldn't ask a second time. "Who exactly are you?" I crouched in front of him and grinned. I didn't notice his gradually angry expression at all. "Teacher, your temper has improved now. I really miss you." He pondered in confusion, not remembering when he had taken on such a disciple. He asked me if I knew who he was. I told him, of course I do. How could I not know? The time spent with my teacher in my past life was not just a dream, from knowing nothing to growing up. But now, I'm the only one who remembers this. At this moment, I looked up and firmly told my teacher, "You are the end of a glorious era. The great hero Valentin Milos who ushered in the era of humanity. And I am your disciple from the future." But clearly, upon hearing my words, the teacher doesn't believe him. He asked me if I knew why he didn't like storytellers. Having spent so long with the teacher in my past life, how could I not know? He smiled and told him the answer. That means the storyteller always distorts the truth. After hearing my answer, he asked me another question. In that case, what would he say? I scratched my head, indicating that I knew he would definitely want me to leave. The teacher thinks I have the ability to see through people's hearts. Clearly, he still doesn't trust me. Seeing his expression, really makes me very sad too. Then I can only use this method to prove it. I drew my sword. I quickly aimed it at the teacher, with my fighting spirit swirling around me. Teacher, please forgive my rudeness. This foolish young master of the Marquis 8, often seen as weak, actually learned the soul of the sword technique in just 10 seconds. I did this just to prove to my teacher that I am his disciple from a past life. I decided to use my soul technique to destroy the chains that bind my teacher. Watch me make a move. Teacher, please wait a moment. Because if I destroy the chains, this place will collapse. And I obviously know that. That's exactly why. It must be destroyed. After saying that, I immediately rushed toward the teacher with my sword. The one who trapped the teacher here is a man called Hero Teslan. He once promised the teacher that he would come back one day, but this despicable man never returned. 50 years have passed just like that. The teacher, who has been waiting for decades, finally realizes that they have been abandoned. But now, I return with the memories of my past life. I will never let the teacher be bound by shackles again. I swing my sword to cut through the chains. The teacher is also shocked by my power. Can this mysterious boy really do it? All I heard was a whoosh. I swept past him, accompanied by the sound of breaking chains. The teacher couldn't believe it. The chains made of dragon bone were really cut, just as the teacher was about to fall. My hand, filled with soul power, was ready to catch him. At the same time, I shouted, "Teacher, be careful." Then I held the teacher in my arms. Tell him that I am different from that Teshalan guy. I won't be untrustworthy. I will prove myself through actions. But the teacher didn't have time to be moved right now. I need him at the top of the cave now. I told the teacher to hold on to me. Now I need to take him out. Watching the tears fall from his eyes. There is not a trace of panic in my eyes, but a sense of unwavering determination. Then I slowly raise my sword. As I recite the sword mantra, a powerful and piercing sword energy fills the entire blade. This is my strongest defensive move. The sword energy forms an aura that prevents rocks from reaching us. At the same time, this is what my teacher taught me about sword mastery. At the same time, I drove my sword fiercely into the ground. I unleashed my sword technique once again. In an instant, the entire cave was leveled by me. My master could no longer hold back and asked me who I really was. How could someone so young possess the aura of a sword soul? I tightly embraced my master. I told him I am your disciple from the future. I learned all of this long ago. Then I smiled at him. For the next 13 years, let's travel the world together. After I finished speaking, the teacher cupped my face with both hands. This was the teacher's habitual gesture, to confirm whether the other person was lying. At that moment, I was also exhausted. I collapsed on the ground, but the teacher still had doubts. Sitting on me, he said, "It's very rude to force a relationship with someone." I had no strength left to explain. I introduced myself again. My name is Jack. I was your disciple in a past life. In this life, I hope you will take care of me. The idiot young master who even dogs want to take a bite out of. He actually went to the market with his lowly master behind her back. I don't know why. His master hasn't said a word to me in 5 days. He only told me after I asked him. At first, he thought I was a descendant of the Teslan family, but he realized he was mistaken, because it's impossible for someone so young to manipulate soul power. After hearing the teacher's words, I understood he wanted me to tell him the answer myself, and if I didn't answer, I would definitely get beaten up like in my past life. I told the teacher that even a genius from the fighting spirit sect can only use soul power if they are one of the very few. The teacher confirmed that was correct, although that's the case, but he discovered that my soul had accumulated a great deal of murderous intent. He could sense that the blood on my hands, seemingly harmless, was even more than his. The teacher asked me if I had ever thought about why such things would happen to me. It was then that I understood. It turned out that the master had been contemplating this for the past few days. Then, scenes from my past life flashed through my mind. I had single-handedly annihilated an army of 1,000,000. But I still didn't understand why I was reborn. I told the teacher, this is not the rebirth I wanted. Maybe someone gave me this opportunity. Perhaps that person has other motives. But why think so much about it now? Live well in the present. If there really is a motive, the mastermind will come looking for me someday. After all, for me right now, being with the teacher is the most important thing. The teacher was speechless upon hearing this, praising me for being so articulate. Then, they asked what I planned to do next. I teased the big yellow dog, saying I needed to find someone who would work for me first. After all, this is something that must be done. because of the battles with the guardians of those families. And the night 5 days ago when they took the teacher away. The backlash from using soul power has caused me great suffering. I even hid it from the teacher and drank 2 bottles of high-grade potions. Even so, I've still been in pain for almost 5 days. Right now, my body is very weak. So I need trustworthy allies to protect me. Just as I was planning to take the teacher to buy a new sword, I ran into a girl at the corner of the street. She covered her head and said sorry. The girl in a hurry. I was about to help her up, when I realized I had just said I needed someone to fight for me, and I found someone quite extraordinary. So I immediately took out my pouch of money, and asked if she was willing to be my companion. Looking at his confused expression, I tempted him. As long as he agreed, I could give him all the money in this bag. He took the bag, and felt there were at least 5 pounds in it, so he hurriedly said he couldn't accept so much money. I smiled and asked him how much he thought was appropriate. He thought for a long time and told me 1 silver coin would do. After I handed him the silver coin, he quickly gave me his flowers. Then he bowed to me and hurried away. Watching his back, I realized this person was the gem I was looking for. The master also noticed his exceptional qualities, and mentioned that he hadn't seen a vampire in a long time. The master asked me if I chose him as a companion because I knew his identity. I told the master that I didn't know he was a vampire. I only saw his potential. If properly nurtured, he could possibly reach level 10 in the future. The master criticized me for not realizing his identity. His tone suggested that there is still much he will teach me. I urged the master to ensure his longevity. Just stay by my side and guide me. In the laughter and joy between me and the teacher gradually remembered that girl from earlier. It seemed like he had seen her somewhere. The teacher seemed to recall something. So he decided to take me to meet someone. A silly beggar who deserves a kick or two, was actually squatting by someone else's window begging for food. Not long ago, the teacher told me that the vampire clan is the only race capable of contending with the dragon. 10 years ago, the 2 clans waged war. The vampire clan just wanted to leave the beast forest, but in the end, the dragon clan emerged victorious. The remnants of the vampires took the opportunity to escape. The child I just collided with might be the daughter of a vampire who escaped from the forest. But I don't care about his identity. I told my master that I had made up my mind. Let him be my first subordinate. But my master thinks I'm cruel, to involve an innocent child in my plans. Although that's not how I see it. Still, my master does have a point. After all, 400 years ago, the teacher once verbally established a non-aggression pact with all the kings of the various races led by the dragon clan. That is, all races other than humans are prohibited from interfering in the affairs of the human world. Since then, all races have moved their habitats to the monster forest. However, as time passed, most of the kings who participated in the agreement have passed away. After all, no matter how powerful a race may be, it cannot overcome time. Yet their descendants are no longer bound by the promise, but they cannot leave the forest. Because the dragon clan, which has lived for over 2,000 years, must adhere to their agreement. So they continue to suppress other races. They prevent any other race from stepping foot outside the beast forest. The teacher's judgment is correct. However, he should have wiped out the entire dragon clan from the beginning. In my previous life, upon learning this, I exterminated the entire dragon clan. At that moment, I smiled at the teacher, and held his hand, so he wouldn't feel guilty. No matter what, I am still his disciple. I will help him handle everything. The teacher said to do as I said. A colleague reminded me never to give him my acupoints. I don't understand what the teacher means by this. After all, he is still a child. Children should eat more nutritious food. At this moment, the vampire girl walking through the crowd was still thinking about how that strange person she met today spoke to her like this, and how he had asked her to be his companion for so long. No one had ever spoken to her so gently before. After her mother drank the half-orc's blood, she should be able to regain her strength. She also recalled her mother's previous warning, never drink human blood. To be precise, other than the blood given by uncle, no blood can be consumed. When he returned home, his mother lying in bed told him there were guests. This was unbelievable to him. Who would dare to visit a vampire's home? Just then, I appeared at his window, smiling, and asked him why he took so long to come back. He was surprised to see me. Why was I in his house? At that moment, the teacher slowly said to sit up. Let me take a good look at your face. The person lying in bed slowly sat up. She is a very beautiful woman. After admiring her appearance, the teacher said, "Long time no see. But how did you end up like this?" The holy progenitor of the vampire clan, Vivian Royalen, the little girl from the Marquis's house, thought to be foolish by others, actually tried to steal a vampire's ice cream. Just now, I followed the little vampire to his home. My master is chatting with the vampire progenitor, Vivian, but it seems Vivian doesn't recognize him anymore. She thought he was a vampire hunter, but when my master mentioned his name, Veridin Milos, she realized he was the one who drove the vampire clan into the beast forest. Hearing this, Vivian became so excited that she started to cough violently. She couldn't understand why such a legendary figure had turned into a puppet. My master told her he was under a curse. There is only one night a month when I can become a normal human. However, he let Vivian answer his question first. Why is the true ancestor of vampires no longer in the beast forest, but has come to live in human territory? And it seems he hasn't fed in a long time. Vivian replied, "Someone is esteemed as my master, possesses status and formidable strength. However, he no longer resents his master for driving his clan into the forest. If it weren't for his master, the vampire clan might have already been exterminated by humans." Then he explained the situation to his master. There are 5 tyrants in the beast forest, and 2 lords controlling them from behind. The vampires plan to escape the forest, to break free from their control. When his beautiful daughter was young, the dragon discovered that they were trying to escape. Unexpectedly, the dragon, feeling pity for him, graciously spared his life. He allowed them to survive in the village only by drinking the blood of cattle and pigs. Only in this way would he let him and his daughter go. He had transformed into his current form to protect his daughter. The master felt that this was truly tragic. Clearly, the true ancestor has overwhelming kingly qualities, yet has to wait for death in this broken-down village. Just as the master was chatting with him, his daughter Charlotte told me, "Uncle, come back quickly." And uncle doesn't like having guests at home. I was very curious about his uncle. I asked him if he could tell me about his uncle. To my surprise, he looked at me doubtfully. He asked if I was just trying to get close to him because I knew his uncle was rich. He thought I was trying to scam him for money. I was speechless. I explained that I was just bored. Then Charlotte told me that the house she lives in with her mother was given to them by her uncle, and they deliver food to them every 3 days. I understand that the food he referred to is the blood of cows and pigs. I was just about to tell him that the guy he called uncle actually hadn't finished speaking. A voice interrupted. "Is that about me?" A baron, dressed in finery and leaning on a scepter, appeared before us. He asked when Charlotte had made such friends. And he has never seen before. Is he from out of town? I knew the person in front of me must be the uncle Charlotte mentioned. He scrutinized me for a long time. Looking at my attire, he realized I was from a noble family. At the same time, he also heard that there were other people in the room. At that moment, Vivian asked my mentor to bring in his daughter. When I walked in with him and Charlotte, I saw Vivian lying on the bed, along with the teacher. To my surprise, Vivian's expression turned to one of terror upon seeing her daughter's uncle. The man gently patted Charlotte's head, telling her not to be too nervous. It was like encountering a ghost. He then insisted that he wouldn't do anything. "Feel free to say whatever you want. I won't interfere with the mother and daughter saying their final goodbyes." This young lord of the Marquis, who people say is a bit off in the head, actually bragged in front of the vampire. Just now, the vampire progenitor Lillian was about to die. Her daughter Charlotte knelt by the bed, not knowing what was wrong with her mother, but she thoughtfully made her mother drink the half-orc blood that he had worked so hard to obtain. But the mother told him it's not necessary. Then she expressed that she had nothing. She felt sorry for her daughter for him. Looking at the scene before me, I felt that the teacher and I had no reason to stay here, because we had just happened to come to this prison. We weren't obligated to see Charlotte's mother off. But I still walked over and asked him, "Vivian, are you willing to entrust your daughter to me?" Charlotte and his mother were both surprised by my words. I sat by the bed, holding Lillian's hand. I asked him how he wanted Charlotte to grow up in the future. Did he want her to revive the vampire clan? Or to inherit the position of the true ancestor and rule the entire world? Or did he want to completely destroy the dragon clan, which plays with and drives the vampire clan towards extinction? Nearby, Charlotte's uncle reacted to my words. That's truly the innocent words of a child. Then Gia started laughing. However, his slightly trembling hand brought me back. He remarked that Lord Valentine's apprentice is indeed exceptional, but he doesn't ask for much. He just hopes his daughter Charlotte can grow up happily. That's enough for him. However, he asked me if I would truly take responsibility for Charlotte. I assure you I will. Please rest assured, noble vampire progenitor. Immediately after, the vampire progenitor stroked his daughter. She completely left this world. Even if Charlotte cried her heart out, she could not prevent her mother's disappearance. However, at that moment, an incongruous laughter suddenly rang out. I couldn't help but clench my fists. It was Charlotte's uncle. He was laughing and playing nearby. Then he couldn't help but burst into wild laughter. Charlotte didn't understand either. Why was her uncle able to laugh when her mother was dead? Because Charlotte's uncle thought I was bragging. I made him laugh so hard his stomach hurt. He seeks revenge and finds happiness. He even shamelessly offers to help this dying child. He hadn't finished speaking. I gathered my rage. I raised my fist and smashed it toward him. With a loud crash, this arrogant man was directly sent out of the room. Yet he was still smiling as he flew out. Once he steadied himself, he scolded me for being such an ill-mannered young master, to dare ambush him. I saw him grin widely. Then his fiery aura coalesced around him. He intended to teach Charlotte's new bad friend a good lesson. Just as he was about to counterattack, the master's voice rang out, "What is your name?" This immediately made him stop his attack. He clearly felt no magical fluctuations. But a puppet was actually speaking. The master ignored him. In a cold voice, he said, "Apart from the two lords, the other 5 divine dragons can only stay in the forest, which means you are not one of them. You look like you're only 200 years old. Could it be a newly matured one born during this time?" Charlotte's uncle was first taken aback when he heard this. Then he angrily asked how the master knew. "You foul woman, who exactly are you?" The young master of the Marquis, always considered a coward by the family, actually defeated a dragon with just 3 moves. Just now, my master revealed his true identity. He is from the dragon clan. He was very surprised upon hearing this. I don't know how my master found out. So he angrily asked my master, "Who the hell are you, you filthy woman?" I never expected this person would dare to insult my master in front of me. Just as I was about to teach him a lesson, the master stopped me and told me to put him down on the ground. Then I introduced myself to the man. "My name is Veridin Milos, and I am a magician." Hearing that name, the dragonfolk recoiled 2 steps. He had heard of the master's reputation. He is the immortal wizard, once in existence that stood unshakably at the pinnacle of the world. He looked at the man before him, whose face was filled with misfortune. The master spoke the names of 2 dragon lords to him. Only the dragon clan and those truly on par with them could know the names of the dragon lords. Only then did the man believe that the master was not lying. However, he did not take the master seriously. He stated that he was the supreme fire dragon. His name was Belotu. I didn't expect to see a big shot here, but he first needs to deal with his toy's daughter. The master heard to not mess around. He should return to where he belongs. But the little dragon didn't take it seriously at all. He asked the master if he forgot the agreement. The lofty dragon clan only looks down with pity on humble humans and other races. It was only out of great mercy that the master made an agreement, and now a mere puppet dares to command the great dragon. But the master told him he was wrong. The last one to show great mercy was not the dragon, but the master himself. When the agreement was made in the forest, the reason for separating the races was because the arrogance of the dragon clan led to the past race wars. But who would have thought that even now, one's nature is hard to change? Still so self-righteous. Balotelli didn't want to listen any longer. He interrupted the teacher, and he expressed his sternness. He even called his master an old hag. At that moment, I spoke up. I asked him what this lizard was doing here. "Talk to my master properly. Otherwise, I'll take everything from you." Balaton instantly exploded in anger. How dare a child challenge the dignity of the dragon clan? If he didn't tear me apart, it would be an insult to his status. I easily dodged his claws as he lunged at me. Then I crouched down and kicked. I kicked him hard in the jaw. Boruto instantly flew 5 meters away. Then he half knelt on the ground, gasping for breath. Just as he wondered how I had so much strength, I was already in front of him. I lifted his head with my foot, and told him, "The next time you see my teacher speak, you must kneel to speak. Do you understand?" Boruto never expected a lowly human would dare to speak like this to a noble dragon. Seeing his defiant expression, I told him not to be so arrogant. Before I take him down, he should submissively admit defeat. He might just save his life. Boruto couldn't hold back any longer. He grabbed my foot and threw me out forcefully. He made me realize that just because I had Varodan backing me, I couldn't act recklessly. Seeing me thrown out, my master's expression showed no sign of emotion. He didn't say a word, because he understood my strength. Soon, my figure emerged from the dust. I brushed off the dust from my clothes, thinking about what my 9-star magician butler, Alan, would say if he saw this. I guess I'm going to have to go through the trouble of picking out 10 more dresses to choose from. I turned to Charlotte beside me. Now she should see her uncle's true colors. The uncle she mentioned is really nothing but absolute trash. Knowing the truth, Charlotte couldn't help but start to cry. I quickly helped her up, making sure she remembered this guy's ugly face. It was this person who harmed your father and your people. He even treated your mother as a plaything. Although he promised his mother to take responsibility for him, I slowly drew the accessory from my waist. I turned to tell him that what mattered more was his own choice. Now I need to show him who was responsible for him. What kind of power does he possess? The Marquis's third son, treated like an imbecile, actually pressed a divine dragon to the ground. It was all because this little dragon insulted his master, calling her a nasty old hag. I decided to teach him a lesson, and let Charlotte see just how strong someone responsible for him really is. So I drew my sword, and charged at Boruto. But after we exchanged one move, Boruto actually started to laugh. It was because he heard me speaking so confidently, and thought my combat level was impressive. But now he realized it was nothing special. He hadn't even finished his mocking words, but he was surprised to find that his long hair was actually cut off at that moment. I smiled and told him I didn't like the way he looked with his hair down. I'll personally fix it for you. You look much more presentable now. This instantly infuriated Boruto. How dare he toy with the Great Dragon Clan repeatedly? This little brat must be killed. He then gathered his fire spirit. He unleashed the dragon's intense cutting attack against me. And at that moment, I wasn't the slightest bit panicked. I looked completely calm. With a single stroke, I effortlessly blocked his concentrated assault. This left Boruto astonished. He couldn't believe it. Even my teacher didn't expect me to break the dragon god's magic. And I didn't give him a chance to catch his breath. I jumped up immediately. I grabbed his head. Then I slammed it hard against the ground. I asked him if he would dare to speak to my master like that again. At that moment, Boruto, lying on the ground, still had an unbelievable expression. I teasingly told him that his father is Luca from the Beast Forest, right? He was even more surprised then. This is a secret message from the Dragon Clan. How could anyone know their father's name? His father is one of the 5 divine dragons managing the Demon God Forest. I know this because I personally beheaded him in my past life. However, I never met his son at that time. I suspect that with this guy's character, he either died an untimely death or is hiding in some remote village. I didn't tell him any of this. Blame him for having the same foul character as his father. He couldn't help but ask me who I really was. I waved my hand and told him I was merely the first and last disciple of Lord Valentine, whom you call an old hag. Seeing his puzzled look, he asked me how I had solved it. In his eyes, how could a human possibly do this? Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh. Someone like you isn't fit to be the strongest creature in the continent. A divine dragon? Then I warned him by tapping his forehead, giving him 5 seconds. Kneel before my master and apologize with 100 bows. Did you understand? I didn't expect Boruto to dare ask what would happen if he didn't agree. I told him there was only one outcome. That is death. I will personally chop off your dog's head. Just as I was counting down, Boruto suddenly jumped up, planning to escape. He spread his wings and flew away without looking back. He plans to leave this place first. Then he'll look for his companions to plot against me. I didn't expect that this guy really ran away. But can he escape? I originally didn't plan to use this move. Now I have no choice but to use it. That is Wujie. I suggest the third move. Wait until my sword technique is fully condensed. In the sky, the Baro blueprint feels death approaching. I quickly turned to look. I don't know when it started, but a massive vortex appeared in the sky, and the shadows of swords emanating from this vortex are all infused with killing intent. This is exactly the sword technique I have condensed. Limitless sword intent. Heavenly sword descends. At this moment, everything before Boruto completely surpassed his understanding. He did not understand what kind of monster he was facing. He had no thought of fighting back at all. How ridiculous to even consider fighting back. Does he wish to battle the heavens? The third young master of the Marquis's house, who has always been regarded as a fool. I actually learned the Infinity Sword technique in just 10 minutes. the heavenly sword descends. And my opponent is the powerful dragon clan. Facing the celestial phenomenon caused by the sword wings, the dragon clan, Boruto felt no will to resist at all. He only felt he was battling against the heavens. Once swept away by the heavenly sword, he entered my absolute domain. He pleaded desperately for me to spare him, but I paid no attention at all. Because I had said, if he dared to escape, I would personally twist off his head. The backlash of this move was immense. After resolving everything, I blacked out. I fainted, but when I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying on a soft bed, and the surroundings were lavishly decorated. Just as I was wondering where I was, my 9-star magician butler, Alan, walked in. Seeing him call me young master, made me think I was dreaming, or I might be hallucinating. How could he be here? He looks so tearful. He's worried about my injury. I told him to calm down a bit, quickly explain why I'm here. And I asked Alan if he saw a girl with a doll. I learned from Alan. After Charlotte finished her bath and changed her clothes here, she went to sleep in the next room. When Alan found him, he didn't know what had happened. But the little girl looked very helpless and exhausted. Then Alan pointed to the master resting on the sofa, and said, "Tell me the doll is here. They are both safe, so I can rest assured." I mischievously said good morning to the teacher. He scolded me irritably, saying it was evening now. This startled Alan greatly. This doll can actually talk. Looking at the master's annoyed expression, I knew he was definitely worried about my injury. And Alan also told me that this doll had been sitting still for a whole 3 days. This made me even more certain of the teacher's concern for me. I hurried to tell Alan. I would explain it to him in detail later. I made sure he understood that the puppet he mentioned is my mentor. He should speak with more respect from now on. After hearing this, Alan said no more. He expressed absolute obedience to my command. Then I asked Alan to tell me what happened after I fell unconscious. It turned out that he and the guards found the slain knights along the way. This news quickly reached the Marquis's residence. They sent someone to investigate what had happened, and to trace my whereabouts. After searching along the way, they heard news of me in the Avialore territory. Then they rushed to the village where I might appear. When they discovered me, I was knocked unconscious by the backlash of the sword moves, because my injuries were too severe. They hurriedly took me to the temple for treatment. I had to drink 3 bottles of high-grade potions to recover. Hearing this, I finally understood. But I was very confused. Why didn't Alan follow my instructions? Why wasn't he by my sister's side? It turns out that after my sister learned of my disappearance, she decided to come personally to search for me, unaware of my fate. But my father stopped her, and sent Alan, who knows me best, along with the investigation team. I didn't expect my father to personally send Alan. Then I couldn't help but laugh. My father is truly even more foolish than I imagined. Just when I was having a great conversation with Alan, a person walked in without knocking. I scolded him, saying even a dog barks when it enters. Are you even worse than a dog? He ignored my words. He just smiled and said, "You're awake." The third young master was treated like a fool in the Marquis's residence. The third young master actually killed the vice-commander of the Iron Blood Knights with 3 punches. That just happened. The captain didn't knock on the door, and entered my room. He is the one in charge of investigating this tragedy. He immediately wanted to ask me for details about the incident. He even lectured me, the young master of the Marquis, about not playing house with lowly commoners. He even compared me to my foolish second brother. I felt no anger upon hearing that. I even stopped Alan, who wanted to defend me, only because he bought me 3 bottles of top-tier potions. As a return favor, I'll tolerate him this time. Faced with his disdainful questions, I stared at him fiercely. I made it clear that I would answer truthfully. He was taken aback by my gaze. He calculated that even the worthless ones usually didn't dare to look him in the eye. Now he's actually looking at me with that kind of expression. But he didn't think much of it. He asked me, the only one who survived, what exactly happened at the scene. I told him everything in detail. It seemed that the guys escorting me had received some orders. Not only did they want to break my limbs, but they also wanted to torture me in every way possible. I didn't expect my words to make this deputy commander break out in cold sweat. I asked him why he had that expression. Is this the first time he's hearing about it? He quickly interrupted me. No need to say more nonsense. Let me continue answering his question. I clenched my fist and endured his disrespect once again. Then I told him what happened next. The strongest among them wanted to sever the tendons in my hands and feet. He threatened to torment me relentlessly during the 4 days to the academy. The 6-star knight named Lyson, who was supposed to treat me, is determined to destroy my fighting spirit. He wants to reduce me to a useless person who can't cultivate. At this moment, Alan sensed something was wrong. Could it be that his young master is going to speak the truth? I confirmed that it was true. I took them all down. The vice commander of the Iron Blood Knights looked utterly incredulous. I slowly stood up and asked if the deputy captain was deaf. I killed them all. At that moment, the deputy captain didn't believe I could do it. How could the killer be the foolish third young master? He angrily claimed I was lying to him and demanded that I confess. Otherwise, he wouldn't let me off easily. Alan saw him getting agitated. He hurried forward to hold him back. He tried to calm him down. After all, he was the third young master of the Marquis's mansion. He needed to be a bit more courteous. But unexpectedly, this deputy captain actually pushed Alan down. He even scolded him for getting his clothes dirty. Seeing this scene, my whole soul was about to explode. How dare you treat Alan like this? Then I landed a solid punch right on the deputy captain's face. He was knocked back 3 meters. He ended up hitting the wall. How could he keep challenging me again and again? I've already gone around you 3 times and survived. Alan blamed me for doing this. After all, my body hasn't fully recovered. After I threw that punch, I collapsed onto the ground from exhaustion. I told him I was fine. That deputy captain should be a 7th-tier expert. I turned to Alan. Aren't you tired of pretending to be weak and being looked down upon? You mustn't be so humble anymore. Previously, I did not consider things carefully, because in my past life, I did not know Alan's strength. Everything I experienced made me think he had to endure. But in this life, I understand Alan's strength, and I should have ensured that my people received basic respect. Alan told me not to say so much. He listens to everything I say. Let me rest well. Take care of yourself. I grabbed Alan firmly. I asked him if he was willing to hold his head high in the future. Alan slowly stood up. He adjusted his clothes. He told me that the person earlier was the vice commander of the Iron-Blooded Knights. The Marquis ranked 3rd among the knights. I used to look down on anger. I smiled when I heard that. I asked him how many minutes he needed to deal with this guy. Is 5 minutes enough? Alan chuckled as well. Young master, don't you know my skills? 10 seconds is enough.